Hello everyone, I'm Vikas Upadhyay, co-founder sentra.world. Today we will talk about what are the different methodologies on how to calculate the emission, why calculation of emissions are important. So there is a famous saying, you can only reduce or manage something if you can measure. Yeah? So that's the first step. You need to measure the emissions first. Once we can measure, we know how much is the right emissions. If the numbers are correct, then only you can reduce it. So the first step we do is let's measure the emissions. Now there could be different methodologies to calculate, and everyone will start following their own methodologies. So again, different organizations like WRI and WBCST, they came together and devised a standard methodology, so everyone can take the guidance from them that this is how the calculation happens, and then calculate their emissions and report to the right authorities. And this is called GHG protocol. Yeah, this is what they started, this whole guidance program. Now they have designed the whole program on how to do carbon accounting. At the same time, other regulatory and customer requirements also came around calculating carbon, reporting carbon, etc. It gets super confusing. So let me demystify this a little bit for you. So we classify this into three parts. Number one, the key standards. Number two, certifications. Number three, regulations. Within the first bucket, which is key standard, there is the granddaddy of all, which is the green gas protocol. Then comes sector specific, like, and we'll focus on steel. So the most relevant one and the most widely used is World Steel Association methodology. Then there are newer ones which are coming, like responsible steel, like GSCC and others. So these are the key standards. They have their own methodology through which you calculate the emissions. There are certain way to report, and you report the emissions. Number two is certifications. Within certification, ISO, which has been around for decades now, is the most important. Within that also there are different classifications, namely ISO 1464, 1467, 14404, 14044, and 14025. All of these cater a specific requirement. For example, you need a corporate level carbon emission calculation, you go for 1464. If you need that to break down further into by product emissions, you go for 1467. If you need LCA and EPD, you go for 14044 and 14025 and so on. Plus, for specific for India, there are two more that has come up, like GreenCo and GreenPro, which is led by CII. Again, they also set a standard that this is how the calculation should happen. There's a proper formatting, reporting format, etc. The third one is regulatory. This is something that you have to do. The first two are more voluntary. You can do it if you want, but the last one, which is regulatory, is mandatory, and within which the most important ones are EU CBAM, which is most of you must have heard the term EU CBAM, and we will cover this in more detail in our later podcast. The second one is BRSR, which is the one around not only carbon but broader emission, and that is led by SEBI. So all the top 3,000 companies by market capitalization, they have to report BRSR. Again, we will cover that in a separate podcast, because it's very complicated. There are different ways to calculate, etc. So we will cover that. A new one which you might have heard is CCTS, which is led by Ministry of Power and Ministry of MOEFCC. They Most of you are aware with the PAT scheme. Many of you, if not all of you, are calculating the PAT scheme. Now it will be replaced with CCTS. The draft report is out, and the final report is expected sometime later this year. And the taxes, that has a tax implication that will start probably from 2026. Similarly, CBAM will also start from 2026, the tax implications. So these are the key methodologies, and in subsequent postcard we'll pick one each of these and explain in more detail.